All right. I like it. Okay. Well, let's get started. So, gang, I want to give you a blinding flash of the obvious in terms of a statement. Real estate is a direct sales business. It is not a retail business. And I discovered that years ago when I got into the business in 1993. I can't believe that it's coming up on 30 years next year. It is crazy because I still, I know I don't look like I'm 23, but gang, I feel like I'm 23. And it's been nearly 30 years. And when I got into the business 30 years ago, it was a direct sales business. And that's never changed. And what is interesting is that I find that most real estate agents will spend their time on marketing and promotion, whether it's social media or mailers, postcards, whatever it is, advertising. I see some agents still advertising in newspapers and whatever. And very little, if no, time spent on their communication skills, really practicing their ability to communicate with other human beings, and the act of going out and actually talking to people. In other words, prospecting. It's very interesting to me. And I see agents who struggle year after year trying to earn sufficient income in real estate or to hit their goal. And I can tell you that 10 times out of 10, when that's the case, there is a disproportionate focus on the things that don't matter and little focus on the thing that does matter, which is the communication skill and going out and actually using those communication skills in talking to people. So we've talked a couple of times over the last couple of months about the response pattern. And I want to cover that again today in terms of the process, but then I want to get deeper into the sales skills that we use in communicating with people, whether it's in a cold call or prospecting on the phone or a door knock, or sitting down with somebody at their kitchen table to list the home, or sitting down with somebody in a conference room to get them to sign a buyer broker agreement, to assist them to choose us versus the competition. Because here's the truth. There is more competition today than there has ever been in the business of real estate. There are more real estate agents than ever before. And your potential clients, the prospects, have a difficult choice. Difficult in that they have to discern who is their best option. And your job is to separate yourself from the competition to make sure that they choose you versus all those other choices, hundreds, if not thousands of choices they have in your respective market. And gang, the single best way that you can do that is not your business cards. It's not your social media posts. It's not how much time you spend in marketing. It's not how good your card looks or what kind of car you drive. All of those things are secondary and tertiary, and in many cases irrelevant to this, which is your ability to communicate with another human being, to help them feel safe and secure, to guide them through a conversation that helps them feel confident. Your number one value that you offer any of the prospects that you're hoping to work with and convert to clients is your ability to help them feel confident that choosing you is the right thing to do. And your card, your postcards, your social media, those things don't do that. Because I don't care what image is created there, at the end of the day, they got to sit down and talk with you. You have to have the ability to lead them through a conversation that at times is going to be difficult. And the agent, more specifically, the leader who takes them through a conversation where the client or that prospect feels comfortable, safe, secure, that's the agent who's going to get the business. So I just want you to think about this in terms of your business plan. How much time have you set aside to hone your skills, to practice your ability to communicate? See, I believe that you should have set aside at least a half an hour every day to memorize scripts and to role play those scripts and to practice your skills of communicating with other human beings. Have you committed to reading some books on communication, on how to be a better communicator? How to become more charismatic, to be that person who has the energy that attracts people. Because if you create a great image in terms of your card, your social media, and all the collateral material that you can send out to people, but then you don't match that in terms of your presentation, in terms of the way you communicate, people are going to be disappointed. Now, look, every one of you on this Zoom, very dynamic, very capable, great communicators. But when it comes to real estate, just how good of a communicator are you? When I say real estate, I'm talking about your ability to prospect, to pick up the phone and to call a for sale by owner or an expired or a just listed, just sold, or for that matter, calling your sphere of influence and getting business. See, the better you are at that process, at that skill of leading people through a great conversation where they feel confident, where they feel safe, of course, the better off you're going to be financially in this business. The number one key indicator to your success in this business will always be your comfort level and your skill level when it comes to communicating. So let me just outline again for you the response pattern. For most of you, you know what this is. For those of you who don't, just take notes. And if you know what it is, I would encourage you to take notes anyway, because I believe that the mother of memory is repetition. So write this down. The title is response pattern. Anytime we're engaged in a conversation with a prospect, we should be following this outline. The first step to the response pattern is to simply ask a question. Now, in most cases, I'm going to ask a closing question. For example, if I'm calling a for sale by owner, I'm going to just introduce myself and say, "Good morning, this is John Ciet with Century 21 Everest. I noticed that your home's on the market for sale by owner. I'm calling to find out when you plan on interviewing an agent for the job of actually getting your home sold." I'm going to then at that point, obviously give them an opportunity to talk, which is step number 2. So step number 1 is ask a question. I always like to ask a closing question. In other words, let them know what my intention is. When are they planning on interviewing an agent to actually get their home listed? In other words, what I'm saying is, let's talk. That's a closing question. So step number 1 is a closing question. Step number 2 is to listen. Listen to what they say. Don't ask a question if you're not going to listen. And that's the challenge that most people have. And this is one of the number 1 skills in communicating, is to be willing to ask a question, to know which questions to ask. And so therefore, that's why we need to be scripted. And if you don't have scripts memorized, then you don't know which questions to ask. And then you default to what you normally do. And I would ask you, how well does that work out for you? You know, the agents that I work with consistently and have over the years, one of the things that we work on is getting a script down, memorizing it, whether it's the buyer broker conversation, the listening conversation, or any of the prospecting calls. Get the script down, memorize it, so you don't have to think about what you're going to say, and you can actually just, through muscle memory, through rote repetition, just simply ask the question, and then it gives you an opportunity to listen. Because see, if you're worried about what you're going to say next, you don't listen to what they're saying. And the problem with that is you're not having a conversation. You're just asking a bunch of questions, giving yourself an opportunity to set yourself up to make a bunch of statements. Well, that doesn't constitute a great conversation, gang. And we know that. We know how it feels when people ask us questions and they don't listen, or worse, they don't even ask any questions. They do all of the talking. And that's what most real estate agents do. They do all of the talking without asking any of the questions and listening and really discovering what's important to the prospect or important to the client. So step number 1 is to ask the closing question. Step number 2 is to listen. Now, next to that, what I want you to write is repeat and affirm. The best way to listen is to listen actively. In other words, to communicate to the other person in the conversation. The most irritating, deflating thing is when somebody asks you a question and you begin to tell them the answer to the question and they interrupt you, or you can see that they've checked out and they're listening to something else in the room, or they're thinking about something in their brain that has nothing to do with what it is you're saying. They're not responding to what it is you're saying. So what we want to do is make certain that we're letting people know that we are listening to them. Because remember, gang, the number 1 human need is validation, it's acceptance, it's acknowledgement. So if you're in a conversation with somebody, let them know that you are hearing them. It's the number 1 thing that you can do to build rapport, to build a connection with somebody, to really ultimately build value. Because we want to be around people who acknowledge us, who value us, right? That acknowledge who we are, validate who we are. And when they make us feel that way, then of course we enjoy being with. So repeat and affirm what they say. use some of their words. So when you ask a question and their response is, for example, so when are you planning on interviewing an agent to get your home listed and sold? And they say, well, we're not planning on working with an agent because we want to avoid paying the commission. Okay, so you don't want to work with an agent. You want to avoid paying the commission. I use their words, and then I'm going to affirm it by saying, you know what, if I were you, I think the same thing too. It's letting them know that, number one, you heard what they said, and number two, it's okay that they have that perspective. You and I never want to be involved in a conversation, especially with a stranger, somebody you've never met before, who immediately wants to make you wrong and wants you to defend your position. See, and that's what happens so often in these conversations when agents are calling prospects. They want to make them wrong. They make them wrong by saying, well, but what if, and have you considered this? No, how about you just simply acknowledge what they said? So what I hear you saying is you don't want to work with an agent because you want to save the commission. And if I were you, I'd feel the same way too, or I would do the same thing too. It doesn't mean you agree with them. All it means is you've acknowledged how they feel and what they're thinking. And that is such a big step towards building rapport and building value in any relationship, including, of course, this relationship, a business relationship between you and that potential client or the prospect. So ask a closing question and then listen actively by repeating and affirming. The third step is the transitional statement. Now, what is a transitional statement? And I'm going to give you several sales skills here within the body of the response pattern. What is a transitional statement? A transitional statement allows me to go from one topic of conversation to another one smoothly. Now, at this point, the topic of conversation is what? We were talking about having them interview an agent and listing with them, and they've indicated that they're not interested in that at this point. So I could continue that conversation if I wanted to, which would not be a good idea because they've already indicated they're not interested in that. And I don't have enough credibility, I don't have enough rapport, I haven't offered enough value at that point to close them again. It would make zero sense for me to close them again or to try to justify why they should meet with me at this point, especially just being 15 to 30 seconds into the conversation. So all I'm going to do is transition from the topic of them meeting with me to a different topic. So within the context of the for sale by owner conversation, I could simply do this. I could use a transitional statement. I could say, well, now that I know that, let me ask you, when your home does sell, when are you planning on moving to next? Or where are you planning on moving to next? Or when your when your home sells, where are you planning on moving to next? Not when, where are you planning on moving to next? Or you could ask the question, how soon do you need to get your home sold? So both of those questions are off the topic of them meeting with me to list their home. The reason I want to do that is because I don't want them to feel like they have to justify their position to not list their home with an agent or to not meet with me. What I want to do is begin to engage in just a normal conversation with them about the broad topic of what they're trying to accomplish, in hopes that by design that I can build rapport with them, lead them deeper into the conversation, and then build up enough credibility, build enough value so that I can circle back around to asking them to meet with me to explore the possibility of listing their home and actually getting it sold. So this is the way it would look. So your home is on the market for sale by owner. I'm calling to find out when you plan on listing your home with the real estate agent and getting your home sold. And their response is, John, I'm not planning on doing that. We're going to save the commission by selling it ourselves. Okay, great. So you want to save the commission by selling it yourself. You know what? If I were you, I'd feel the same way too. Having said that, let me ask you a question. When your home sells, where are you planning on moving to next? So what I accomplished in that is I got clear about what I wanted to talk about. They told me, no, I'm not interested in meeting with you or in listing my home with you. I acknowledged that they took that position. So therefore, it gives them an opportunity to relax, like, oh, this guy actually gets it, as opposed to the other agents who tried to convince me otherwise, or simply gave up, hung up, and moved on to the next prospect. And then I transitioned from that topic to the topic of where they're planning on moving to next. That's step number 3. Step number 4 is then begin to ask more questions. Okay. The first question was, where do you plan on moving to next? And I can ask further questions relative to that particular topic. They would say, for example, well, I'm planning on going to San Diego. Oh, you're going to San Diego. Good for you. What's taking you to San Diego? That's question number 2. Well, I've got a job that I'm being transferred to that location to a new office. I'm going to be managing an office there. Oh, great. Good for you. Now, what kind of business are you in? Well, I'm in the insurance business. Oh, you are? What kind of insurance? Well, health insurance specifically. Oh, that's great. How long have you been doing that? I've been doing it for 22 years. In other words, I'm going to engage, gang, in a normal conversation. If I can engage them in a normal conversation and get them to relax, it's more likely that they're going to listen to what I have to say. One of the reasons that in the beginning, when I call them and I ask them basically to meet with me to talk about getting their home sold, getting it listed, getting it sold, is because the reason they're resistant is because they don't know me. They're very uncomfortable. It's very normal. It's no different than what you or I do when we go into a store where we intend to buy something, like a clothing store. You go into Nordstrom and the sales clerk walks up and asks you, how may I help you? And you immediately say, I'm just looking. Well, you're not just looking, you're going there to buy something, and you actually do need their help, because 2 minutes later, when you can't find the article or the department that has the stuff you're looking for the salesperson for assistance. And then you're frustrated because you can't find the salesperson. And how many of you relate to that? You know what I'm talking about. So, gang, we have to ask these questions and have to have this conversation so it gives them an opportunity to relax. And if they relax, then they're more likely to follow our lead. And where are we leading them? We're leading them back to the point of meeting with us to talk about the possibility to get their home sold, to get it actually listed and sold as opposed to just on the market. So I don't know how many questions I asked there. It was probably 5 or 6 different questions. I want to circle back around to closing them to actually meet. So I asked them, what's causing them to decide to sell their home? They said, well, they're going to transition to San Diego because there's a job transfer. He's in a healthcare or health insurance business, been doing it for 22 years. Then what I'm going to do is going to circle back around. So I would use the transitional statement to get me back onto a different topic, right? So, well, having said that, Mr. Seller, you know, it's so interesting. You mentioned that your primary concern is avoiding paying the commission. And what I really hear you saying is that you just want to net as much money as possible on the sale of your home. Is that correct? Well, yeah, that's correct. What I just did there is called a level shift. A level shift, write that down. It's a level shift. A level shift really reads between the lines in terms of what they said. See, he said, we don't want to pay a commission to an agent. And when he says that, what I hear him saying is he wants to net as much money as possible. He just wants to make certain that at the end of the process, he puts more money in his pocket. So I acknowledge that. What I hear you saying is it's not that he doesn't want to pay a commission. He just wants to make certain that he nets as much money as possible. So what I'm going to say in that situation is this. I've asked all of those questions in that normal conversation about why he's moving, where he's moving to, and what he does for a living. Then I'm going to circle back around. I'm going to say, well, now that I know that, what I hear you saying is that ultimately you just want to net as much money as possible. If I could show you a way where you could actually list your home with me, I could do all of the work, and you could sell your home for more than you could on your own, and you could actually net more money, even paying my commission, it sounds like you'd be interested in doing that. So what would work best for you, an afternoon or an evening where we could sit down and talk about that? Now, at this point, he has 2 options. He can say, well, yes, great, let's meet, or he can say, no, I'm not interested. And at that point, that's going to dictate what I do. If he says, I'm interested, then I'm going to close him for the appointment. If he's not interested, then I'm going to repeat the process of the repeat and affirm. I'm going to just simply go back to asking more questions, but not more questions on him meeting me for an appointment. I'm going to talk more about what he's trying to accomplish. So gang, that's the response pattern. Now in that, what we pulled out of there was the repeat and affirm, which is a sales skill. You can use that anytime. You don't have to be in in a prospecting conversation. You can use the repeat and affirm in any conversation you have with any human being. Try it, practice it today. Listen to what people say, listen to what they actually say, and repeat some of the things that they say and affirm it. If somebody's sharing something exciting with you, you ask them, so what'd you do this weekend? Oh, we went to Catalina Island. You went to Catalina Island? That's awesome, good for you. See, that's the repeat and affirm. If you engage in people that way with that sort of energy and acknowledgement of what they say, you're going to increase the quality of the conversation because they're going to respond to you with much greater energy. Try that in any conversation that you have today and all the conversations that you have today. So that's the repeat and affirm. The transitional statement would be just simply, well, now that I know that, or having said that, or as important as that is, and that allows us to go from one topic to the next without trying to fish for words or umming and ahhing and looking awkward and looking and feeling a lack of confidence. The next thing that we talked about was the level shift. The level shift is just simply reading between the lines in terms of what they say. Okay. They said that they wanted to avoid paying the commission. Well, really what that means is they want to net as much money as possible. So the level shift is reading between the lines and kind of interpreting what they're saying. And then something that we didn't talk about, but I did, was the pattern interruption. A pattern interruption is asking questions that are off topic. The original topic was meeting for an appointment to talk about listing their home. And then I got off topic by asking questions about what's causing them to decide to sell their home, where they're planning on moving to, what does he do for a living, how long has he done that? Those are pattern interruptions. In other words, they're questions that are off the topic of meeting, about him meeting with an agent or being interested in an agent. I just simply changed the subject altogether. That's called a pattern interruption. And then the last thing that I would say that we didn't incorporate would be a soundbite. One of the things that I could say in the conversation as I'm closing him, well, now that I know that, Mr. Seller, what I hear you saying is that you just want to net as much money as possible. And here's the cool thing, because of the massive exposure of Century 21, the fact that your home would appear on over 300 websites, and the fact that my company sold 7,000 homes last year, the way we did that is by generating a ton of exposure, more than you ever could on your own as a for sale by owner. That is the single most important thing that we can do to ensure that you get your home sold for more money. So having said that, what will work best for you, an afternoon or an evening, we can sit down and talk about the possibility of actually getting your home sold for more money than you could on your own. And then of course, go from there. So gang, look, hopefully you've taken notes. Go back and listen to this, watch this over and over again, and really understand the response pattern, and then work on practicing those sales skills of repeating and affirming, using the transitional statement, using the level shift, using questions for interrupting the pattern, changing the subject, and then using sound bites to justify, to show features and benefits as to why they should work with you or meet with you, depending upon what the conversation is, so that they choose you versus the competition. Gang, remember this, the single most important thing that you can do to distinguish yourself from the competition is not the commission that you're willing to charge, it's not the price that you're willing to tell them, it's your ability to lead them through a powerful conversation where they see you as a confident leader who can help them get ultimately what it is that they want. All right, let's finish this up with some closing affirmations and go out there and be a great leader, communicate, go find people, change their lives, list their homes, and help them move on to the next chapter of their